That morning, I was washing dishes in the familiar kitchen when the landline rang. On the other end was Noah, my youngest son, his voice more urgent than usual. "Mom, I just saw Camila board the flight to Italy. I'm holding her passport in my hand right now." I froze, my hands soaked with soap suds, trembling with every beat. Camila in Italy? That was completely impossible, because just minutes before I had heard her voice calling down from upstairs, "Mom, I'm going to take a shower." The water was still running steadily in the bathroom. My heart pounded wildly, my mind spinning between two opposite truths. On one side was Noah, my pilot son, who would never lie about what he witnessed. On the other was the familiar sound inside this very house, a voice I could never mistake. So in the end, which was real? One person, appearing in two places at the same time. Could that even happen? I stood frozen, ears ringing with the suffocating weight of doubt. If you were me, who would you believe? Your son in the cockpit seeing it with his own eyes, or your own ears hearing it clearly inside the house? What would you do if you discovered your daughter-in-law had a chilling secret? Tell me in the comments. My name is Martha Greene, and I am 65 years old. I live in the quiet suburbs of Willow Creek, a small town nestled in the Arizona desert. Since my husband, Charles, passed away from a heart attack 10 years ago, I have learned to accept a life of solitude, pouring all my love into my two sons and their small families. My white wooden house sits at the end of a tree-lined street where every morning children ride their bikes on the sidewalks, and adults greet each other with simple hellos. The neighbors here are all friendly, and trouble is rare. Perhaps that is why I always believed this home was the safest place to hold on to the peace of old age. My eldest son, David, is 40 this year and works as an architect. He often buries himself in blueprints until late at night, but no matter how busy he is, David always makes time to have dinner with his family. He is kind, responsible, and has a reserved nature, much like his father. I still remember the day David introduced Camila to us. That young woman had a gentle smile, clear eyes, and a way of speaking that instantly inspired trust. Since their wedding, Camila had become the model daughter-in-law any mother would dream of, capable, graceful, and devoted to family. Ethan, my 7-year-old grandson, is the greatest joy in this house. He is lively, loves to draw, and has a vivid imagination. Every morning, when the yellow school bus arrives, he runs out with his backpack bouncing behind him, never forgetting to turn and wave goodbye. To me, those simple moments are more precious than any fortune. My youngest son, Noah, is another source of pride. Since childhood, he had dreamed of becoming a pilot, and now that dream has come true. Every time I see Noah in his uniform, standing tall as he walks through the airport doors, I am reminded of Charles. My husband used to say that a man is only truly happy when he lives with passion, and Noah has achieved just that. His work keeps him away from home often, but whenever he calls, his voice is so full of energy, it feels like I am holding him close in my arms. Our daily life revolves around small routines. In the morning, I wake up early to prepare breakfast for the family. David usually leaves for work with a cup of coffee Camila makes for him. Camila takes the time to tidy up and get Ethan ready for school. I often teased her, "You really are the keeper of this home," and Camila would always smile sweetly and reply, "I just want you and everyone to feel comfortable." Between us, there was no conflict, at least not back then. In the evenings, after a long day, the whole family gathered around the dinner table. I can still see Camila placing an extra piece of fish on David's plate, pouring water for me, then gently reminding Ethan, "Eat slowly, sweetheart." David would sometimes share stories from the office while Ethan excitedly showed off his newest drawings. I sat there, watching that scene, and felt at peace, convinced I was truly fortunate. The neighbors also adored Camila. Mrs. Richards, who lives next door, once told me, "Your daughter-in-law is so thoughtful, she brought me some baked goods yesterday." Even the grocer down the street said, "Camila is always polite, and she often buys extra things for her neighbors." Those compliments only strengthened my belief that I had a perfect family. I used to think that at my age, nothing could be happier than living in a home filled with laughter, with a successful son, a kind daughter-in-law, and a lovable grandson. I believed these peaceful days would last forever. But I had no idea that behind Camila's gentle smile, behind those seemingly warm family dinners, there was a dark secret waiting to explode. The kitchen clock struck 10 in the morning. I had just finished washing the dishes when the phone rang urgently. Wiping my wet hands on my apron, I picked it up. On the other end came the voice of my youngest son, Noah, usually calm but now unusually tense. "Mom, I'm on an international flight. There's something you need to hear right now." I was startled, his voice trembling slightly. "Mom, I just saw Camila. She's sitting in first class next to a middle-aged man who looks very wealthy. I'm holding her passport in my hand. How can you possibly explain this to me?" I froze. "What did you say? Camila?" "But I just heard her calling down a minute ago. She said she was going to take a shower, and the water is still running upstairs." I stood still, listening clearly to the sound of water trickling from the bathroom. There was no mistake. Noah lowered his voice, firm and steady. "No, Mom, I'm looking right at her. She's wearing a light blue dress, her hair tied neatly back, and she's speaking very closely with that man. This is no coincidence. It's Camila." I felt the blood in my veins turn cold. I turned toward the staircase, and at that exact moment, Camila's voice called down, clear and undeniable. "Mom, I'm done showering. Do you need me to pick up anything at the market?" The sound made my spine stiffen. On one side was my pilot son, honest and seeing with his own eyes. On the other was the familiar voice echoing inside the very home where I stood. "Are you sure, Noah? Could you be mistaken?" I asked, desperately hoping for some flaw in the story. But Noah was unshakable. "Mom, I can't be wrong. I saw her name and picture in the passport. It fell right by the boarding gate. I picked it up, and moments later, I saw her step onto the plane with that man. Now they're sitting just a few rows from the cockpit. Mom, something is very wrong here." My heart raced. I turned back, staring at the staircase as the sound of water stopped. A moment later, Camila appeared, hair wet, robe draped over her shoulders, smiling naturally as if nothing had happened. "Mom, I'm coming down," she said softly. I turned back, clutching the phone tightly, hundreds of questions storming through my mind. "My son, I'm looking at her right now," I whispered. "She just walked down the stairs." Silence filled the line, broken only by his heavy breathing. Then Noah answered, each word sharp and firm. "No way. Mom, I swear to you, Camila is on this plane. I'm looking at her sitting beside that man right now." I trembled. My ears heard, my eyes saw. But everything contradicted Noah's certainty. I forced a smile toward Camila, telling her it was just a friend calling. She nodded, her face calm, and walked into the kitchen to prepare her market basket. I tried to act natural, but inside I was drowning in confusion. After Camila left the room, I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, whispering to Noah, "How certain are you?" His voice came back hard. 100%, Mom. No chance of a mistake. If you're seeing Camila in the house, then who's the woman on this plane? Or if this really is Camila here, then who is standing next to you? Those words cut into me like a blade. I stood frozen, cold sweat pouring down. In my mind, the image of Camila before me clashed with the Camila Noah described on the plane. Everything blurred, spinning out of control. I stammered. You're that certain?" Noah answered. "Mom, I'm a pilot. You know I would never invent something like this. If you won't trust my eyes, then at least trust the passport in my hand. It has her name, her picture, and you must know she's in first class, laughing with that rich man as if they're truly a couple." I was speechless. My hand shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone. In that moment, the whole world seemed to spin. Camila was still in the kitchen, the sound of chopping vegetables clattering familiarly. On the line, Noah's voice struck like a hammer, one woman but appearing in two places at the same time. My heart pounded, choking me. If this was true, then that truth carried a horrifying secret, and the only question drilling into my mind, repeating like a drum beat. So, who is the real one? After that fateful call with Noah, I began to look at Camila with different eyes. Before, I saw her as the jewel of the family, gentle, hardworking, always smiling. But from that moment on, every little gesture of hers became a huge question mark in my heart. That afternoon, I sat with Ethan at the dining table while he scribbled some crooked lines. By chance, I glanced over and froze. Ethan exclaimed, "Look, Grandma. Yesterday Mom helped me with my homework, and her handwriting was so pretty. But today she used the other hand and it looks so messy." The boy held out 2 pages. One neat and straight, the other clumsy and crooked. I forced a smile, patting his head. Maybe your mom was just tired. But inside, my chest tightened. Camila was right-handed. Why would she suddenly use her left hand like someone else? That evening, the family gathered around the dinner table. David shared stories from work while Camila sat quietly, picking food. Suddenly, Ethan dropped his spoon. The boy looked nervous, glancing at his mother. But Camila's reaction shocked me. "Ethan, you're always so clumsy. Can't you ever be careful?" Her voice was sharp and cold. The boy lowered his head, eyes watering. I quickly reassured him. "It's all right, sweetie. Everyone makes mistakes." David also added softly, "Camila, it's just a small thing." She said nothing more, just pressed her lips together. I sat there, remembering how just the other night Camila had sung Ethan to sleep with tenderness, her voice sweet and warm. Those 2 extremes were impossible to reconcile. The next day, I carried a basket of fruit to Mrs. Jones, my close neighbor. She greeted me with a curious look. "Martha, your daughter-in-law stopped by my shop yesterday, handed me something with her left hand. I remember you told me she was right-handed?" I forced a laugh. Maybe she was just playing around. But my heart sank. Even outsiders were noticing the change. It didn't stop there. The baker down the street added his piece. I stopped by to buy pastries for Ethan, and he smiled. "Your daughter-in-law is strange. Some days she's cheerful, complimenting my bread. But this morning she was grumpy, rushed through her purchase, and didn't even say goodbye." I forced a polite smile, but my steps home felt heavy. All those small scattered pieces were forming a distorted picture. From that day on, I started keeping notes. I pulled an old notebook with yellowed pages from the cupboard. I wrote line by line. Monday, Camila went to the market, returned after 2 hours, gentle attitude. Tuesday, Camila wrote with her left hand, snapped at Ethan. Wednesday, Camila cheerful, chatted with neighbors. Each page was another cut to my heart. I asked myself if I was just getting old, my mind playing tricks on me. But how could I have imagined such concrete details? One afternoon, Ethan ran into my arms, his innocent voice tugging at me. "Grandma, last night Mom sang me to sleep, it was so nice, but tonight she didn't even look at me." I hugged him, tears welling in my eyes. If a 7-year-old child could notice the difference, how could I deny it any longer? At night, I sat by the window, listening to the wind rustling through the maple trees. Under the yellow light, Camila sat in the kitchen peeling apples, her face bathed in the gentle glow I knew so well. But I couldn't erase the memory of that morning when she had scolded Ethan so harshly. The woman sitting there, was she really the same Camila as the one smiling beside a stranger on a plane? I began to watch her closely. When she set the table, sometimes she turned the salt shaker with her right hand, sometimes with her left. When she wrote notes for the kitchen, her handwriting changed, sometimes neat and aligned, sometimes messy and impatient. I wrote it all down, each detail cutting into me like a blade. Another time, Camila and I went to the garden to pick vegetables. A neighbor walked by, calling out, "Camila, I saw you at the market yesterday, you were so cheerful." Camila turned to me, smiling awkwardly. She must be mistaken. "I didn't go to the market yesterday." I smiled back, but inside my thoughts tangled. How could the neighbor mistake something she remembered so clearly? Late at night, I lay awake listening to the ticking clock, my mind spinning. I replayed Noah's firm words, remembered Camila's eyes, sometimes warm, sometimes distant. Was I becoming paranoid, or was the truth slowly leaking out through these tiny cracks? One morning, I saw Camila writing a shopping list. I noticed she held the pen in her left hand, her writing clumsy. I asked softly, "When did you start using your left hand?" She laughed. "Oh, I'm practicing for fun, don't worry, Mom." Then she quickly folded the paper and slipped it into her basket. But I caught a fleeting spark of unease in her eyes. In the days that followed, I continued recording diligently. Each line in that notebook became a witness to the confusing changes. I was no longer sure about the woman living under the same roof. She might have been Camila, the daughter-in-law I once cherished, but she might also have been someone else, wearing her familiar mask. Each time I flipped through the pages, my heart tightened. I felt pity for Ethan, anger on David's behalf, and pain for myself. A family once seemingly warm and whole was now cracking apart, undone by small but terrifying details. and deep down I knew these details were only the beginning of a much darker truth waiting ahead. From the dense notes in my journal, I began to see an undeniable strangeness. But writing alone wasn't enough. I needed to witness something with my own eyes, something that could prove I wasn't imagining things. That chance came on a Saturday morning, when Camila, dressed in a pale yellow floral dress, called out from the living room. "Mom, I'm heading to the market to buy some vegetables. Do you need anything?" I hid my tension and answered softly, "Bring me some tomatoes, please." Camila nodded, grabbed a red wicker basket, and walked out the gate. The moment the gate clicked shut, my heart raced. I threw on a shawl, slipped out the back door, and followed at a safe distance. On the familiar cobblestone street, Camila's figure moved quickly toward the market. I kept behind her quietly, my chest trembling with both fear and determination. But when she reached the intersection leading to the market, Camila suddenly turned left into a narrow alley I had rarely set foot in. That alley was nothing like our neighborhood. Old houses with peeling walls, rusty tin sheets nailed as makeshift roofs. I froze, wondering why Camila would choose that path. My steps slowed, and I hid behind an old repair shop. Camila walked straight to a small house with chipped paint and a half-closed wooden door marked with the number 19. She glanced around, knocked lightly, and quickly slipped inside. My heart squeezed tight. This wasn't the way to the market, nor was it any friend's house I'd ever known. I stood frozen for several minutes, chest aching, wanting to storm over and confront her, but my legs felt glued to the ground. A rising dread whispered, if I discovered the truth, would I even be able to bear it? In the end, I turned back, my mind a storm. I walked home, every step heavier than the last. The image of Camila disappearing behind that door at number 19 replayed endlessly in my head. But what chilled me more was what awaited me at home. As I pushed open the kitchen door, I heard the sound of chopping. Then I saw Camila standing at the counter wearing a simple white blouse, hair neatly tied back, smiling as she turned. "Mom, I bought some fresh fish for dinner. Do you like it?" I froze. She was dressed completely differently from the yellow floral dress she had left in less than an hour ago. The red basket was gone, replaced with a clear plastic bag of fish. I had to grip the chair to steady myself. You're back so soon?" I stammered. Camila remained calm. "I just went to the nearby market. Didn't take long." Her voice was light and natural, no different than usual. But to me, nothing felt normal anymore. I sank into a chair, palms damp with sweat. The image of Camila walking into house number 19 burned in my mind. Then, who was the Camila now standing in my kitchen? If both were Camila, one of them wasn't real, or worse, both were hiding something from me. That afternoon, I barely spoke. I sat in the living room, staring out at the sunny garden, my head spinning. Every sound from the kitchen felt like a cruel reminder. Ethan ran over, hugging me tightly. "Grandma, yesterday Mom sang me to sleep. It was so pretty. But tonight she told me to sleep by myself." My throat closed. I could only hold him. His innocent words cut deeper than any suspicion already twisting inside me. That evening, David came home. He kissed his wife happily, not noticing any difference. I watched, heart heavy, wanting to scream the truth, but I bit my tongue. David was tired after a long day. He needed a peaceful home, not his aging mother's doubts. At dinner, Camila placed extra vegetables on my plate, her eyes full of care. I forced a smile, but inside I screamed. I remembered the icy glare she had given Ethan just days ago. Which was real? The gentle woman in front of me, or the one vanishing into that shabby alley house? That night, when the house was quiet, I opened my notebook. I wrote, Saturday, 10 a.m. Camila left in yellow floral dress with red basket, said she was going to the market. I followed, saw her enter house number 19 in the poor alley. Returned home less than an hour later, Camila already in kitchen wearing white blouse, carrying fresh fish. No explanation possible. My hand trembled as I looked at the page. The next day, I tested her. As she folded laundry, I casually asked, "Where did you buy the fish yesterday? You seemed gone a long time." She paused briefly, then said, "Oh, at Riverside Market. They just got fresh fish and I was afraid it would sell out." I nodded, but inside my chest thudded. Riverside Market was in the opposite direction of that alley. At lunch, I pressed further. "Camila, Remember when you married David? You used to say you'd never buy fish at Riverside because it costs double? She chuckled softly. Well, I changed my mind, Mom. But her eyes glimmered with something I couldn't name. From then on, I lived in constant tension. Each time Camila left the house, my nerves burned. I found ways to follow her again and again. Almost every time, there was something off. Once she returned empty-handed, once she carried a different basket than when she left. But the visit to number 19 remained the clearest, undeniable proof. One morning, as I brewed tea, Camila prepared to leave for the market again. She wore a light blue dress and carried a straw basket. I pretended to agree, but inside, I resolved to follow her once more. I trailed her at a distance. She walked straight back into that same poor alley. I held my breath, watching her stop at house number 19, then vanish inside. I waited longer this time, making sure I wasn't seeing things. But when I returned home only 15 minutes later, I nearly collapsed. Camila was already in the living room, wearing a different blouse, reading a magazine with a calm expression. She looked up and smiled. Mom, I bought some fresh vegetables. Let me cook lunch for us. I tried to keep my face steady, but my hands shook. In that moment, I no longer doubted. There were two women, identical to each other, living within my family's life. One Camila, gentle, caring, always smiling. And another Camila, mysterious, slipping into that shabby house at number 19. Sitting alone in my room, I listened to laughter drifting from the kitchen. Tears slid down my cheeks unnoticed. I whispered to myself, so, which one is real? The woman living with my family, or the one disappearing into that dark little house? I knew that to find the answer, I couldn't keep secretly scribbling notes in the dark. I had to confront the secret behind the door of house number 19. The fear inside me grew, but the hunger for truth was stronger. One afternoon, when Camila said she would take Ethan to visit a friend, I threw on a shawl, stepped out the gate, and felt my heart pounding with every beat. The familiar alley appeared in its shabby state, walls peeling, rusty tin sheets clattering under the sun. I walked toward house number 19. Its weathered wooden door was shut, a torn curtain fluttering slightly. I took a deep breath and knocked 3 times. Inside came a shuffle of movement before the door opened a crack, and I froze. Standing before me was a woman who looked exactly like Camila, every feature identical, except her eyes held fear and hesitation. Excuse me, who are you looking for? She stammered, her voice trembling. I had to grip the doorframe to steady myself. Camila? I gasped. The woman's face went pale, and she quickly shook her head. I'm not Camila. I'm Isabel. As I stood in shock, another woman's voice called out from inside. Isabel, stop hiding. Let her in. The young woman with a petite frame and neatly tied hair appeared. She introduced herself. I'm Claire, her roommate. I think you need to hear the whole story. I stepped inside. The small room was dim, filled with the smell of medicine and dampness. An elderly man lay coughing heavily on a folding bed, his breathing labored. Isabel lowered her head, clutching her shirt hem. Claire began explaining. Isabel and Camila met by chance at the market a few years ago. They realized they looked exactly alike. Camila quickly came up with an idea: hire Isabel to pose as her occasionally. At first it was just for errands, shopping, cooking, watching her son so Camila could free up some time. Isabel didn't want to, but her foster parents were gravely ill and needed money for medicine. Camila paid generously, so in the end, Isabel agreed. I was stunned. Isabel raised her tearful eyes. I never wanted to deceive anyone. I just needed money to buy medicine for my parents. Camila told me it was simple, harmless tasks. I never thought it would go this far. I forced my voice to remain calm. And Camila, when she wasn't at home, where was she really going? Isabel stayed silent, but Claire spoke up. I saw Camila with a very wealthy man, driving a sleek black car, carrying himself with power. I clearly heard them call each other honey. His name is Richard Vaughn, a rich businessman in the city. Her words struck like lightning. My chest ached, my head spun. I turned to Isabel, whispering, You and Camila? Who are you to each other? How can you look so identical, like twins? Isabel choked back tears. I don't know. My foster mother only told me I was adopted from a hospital as a newborn, but my birth date? It's the same as Camila's. I was dizzy. That meant Isabel and Camila could be long-lost twin sisters. One raised in comfort, the other in hardship. And the daughter-in-law I had trusted had exploited her own sister to cover up an affair. I sat in silence for a long time. Isabel wiped her tears. Please don't blame me. I only wanted to keep my foster parents alive. If not for them, I would never have agreed. I took her hand, my voice breaking. I don't blame you. The one at fault is Camila. You've become a victim in her lies. When I left house number 19, my steps were heavy, but my eyes were firmer than ever. I knew the truth couldn't remain buried. David and Ethan deserved to know. And the neighbors, who had always praised Camila, needed to see her true face. That evening I sat at the table and opened my notebook. I added a new line. Camila hired Isabel, her identical twin, to stand in at home. Isabel is her long-lost sister. Meanwhile, Camila is involved with Richard Vaughn, a wealthy businessman. This is undeniable proof. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and told myself, it's time to expose her. Not just for my son, but for everyone. The plan unfolded in my mind step by step. I would host a grand family dinner, inviting David, Noah, and Ethan. I would prepare all the evidence. My notebook, the passport Noah had found, Isabel and Claire's testimony. I wanted Camila to have no escape. I pictured Camila sitting at the table, surrounded by those she had deceived. When Isabel walked in, looking like her mirror image, everyone would understand they had been misled. I wanted David to face the truth, and Ethan to know his confusion about his mother's shifting moods was real. Above all, I wanted Camila to pay for her betrayal. That night, I tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. In the darkness, I heard the ticking of the clock, and whispered to myself, tomorrow, the game ends. I will bring the truth back to this family. I chose a weekend evening, when David wasn't busy, Ethan was out of school, and Noah had returned from his flight. I prepared the house carefully. The dining table covered with a crisp white cloth, candles set, the smell of roast meat and apple pie filling the kitchen. On the surface, it looked like a warm family dinner. But in my heart, it was the final battle, the place where the truth would be revealed. David walked through the door, surprised. Mom, why is everything set up like a holiday? Is there something special? I gave a faint smile. I just want the whole family together, son. After dinner, I'll explain. He frowned but didn't ask further. Camila came in next, wearing a pale blue dress, her face bright with a smile. Mom, this is so thoughtful. The table looks wonderful. Let me help finish setting up. I looked at her, my chest tightening. In just a few minutes, that smile would shatter. When everyone was seated, I quietly gave the signal. Noah walked in from outside holding a small folder. David stood up suddenly. Noah, you're back? Why didn't Mom tell me? I stopped him. Sit down, David. We need to hear him out. Camila's face flickered, but her voice stayed gentle. What a surprise, Noah. I thought you were still in Rome. Noah stared straight at her, silent, and placed an electronic passport and a plane ticket on the table. I saw you with my own eyes on the flight to Italy. I picked up this passport at the boarding gate. Explain yourself. The room went silent. David frowned. Camila, what is this about? She forced a laugh. You must be mistaken. Maybe Noah was confused. I never left the house. I calmly opened my old notebook, each page turning like the slice of a knife. Here are my notes, with dates. When you said you went to the market, I followed you. You went into house number 19. When you came back, your clothes were different. And the next day, I saw the same thing. Camila's face paled, her voice urgent. Mom, you're imagining things. Why would you follow me? David glanced at me, bewildered, but I didn't let her twist away. I turned to the door and called softly, Come in. The living room door opened. Isabel stepped inside, her hair loose, her face identical to Camila's, as if a mirror had walked in. Beside her was Claire. The air froze. Ethan rubbed his eyes and cried out, Why are there two moms? His innocent voice stabbed at my heart. David froze, staring wide-eyed from his wife to Isabel. What is going on here? Camila shot to her feet, her voice shrill. Mom, what kind of game is this? Who is she? An imposter? Isabel trembled, but gathered courage. No, I'm not an imposter. I'm Isabel. Camila hired me to pose as her, to stay home, to shop, to watch Ethan, while she was with a man named Richard Vaughn. Claire added firmly, I heard them call each other honey. I saw them enter luxury hotels in the city. Camila paid Isabel to cover it up. David collapsed into his chair, face pale as paper. He turned to his wife, voice breaking. Camila, say something. Is this true? Camila trembled, then slammed her hand on the table. You're all trying to ruin me. Mom, how could you set this up? I stayed calm, sliding the passport toward David. No one set anything up. This is evidence. And Noah is a witness. Even Ethan has noticed. Sometimes you're gentle, sometimes cruel. That's because two people took turns. Now, can you deny it? The air grew thick. Ethan pressed close to me, whispering, "Grandma, I'm scared." I hugged him tightly, eyes locked on Camila. Every 3 minutes, another truth dropped like a hammer. First Noah's testimony, then the notebook, then Isabel's appearance, finally Richard Vaughn's name. Each wave of revelation crashed harder, pushing the room to its breaking point. Camila's voice faltered, her face twisted by anger and fear. David stood shaking, staring at his wife. "I worked day and night to provide for this family. What more did you need? Why did you betray us?" Camila stayed silent, her eyes flickering between panic and resentment. I tapped the table lightly, my voice firm. "Tonight, everything is clear. No more lies will live in this house." In that moment, I knew I had completed the most important part of the plan. I didn't need to scream, didn't need to curse. The truth itself was heavy enough to crush the mask Camila had worn for so long. The air in the dining room was thick, like a storm about to break. Every eye was fixed on Camila, who sat frozen, her hands gripping the edge of her chair. Noah stepped forward, placing the electronic passport and plane ticket firmly on the table. The sound hit like a hammer. "This is undeniable proof. I saw you on the flight to Italy, and this passport, with your name and picture, is right here in my hand." David stared at the papers, then at his wife, his voice shaking. "Camila, I want to hear it from you. Tell me, what is going on?" Camila opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her eyes darted around the room, landing on Isabel, who sat quietly in the corner, her face a perfect reflection of her own. Ethan clung tightly to me, his eyes wide with confusion. Then he asked the question that froze the entire room. "Why are there two moms?" My heart cracked. David's throat closed. Noah lowered his head and clenched his fists. I pulled Ethan close, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Ethan, listen. Everything will be explained. None of this is your fault." Camila heard her son's innocent question and suddenly broke down in tears. They streamed down her cheeks, but her eyes glimmered with defiance. "Fine, I admit it," she said, her voice heavy. "I've been unfaithful. I wanted another life, one where I wasn't stuck working, trapped in this suburban house. Richard gave me everything, money, luxury, status. I was tired of playing the good wife, the dutiful daughter-in-law. I wanted out." Her confession fell like a blade, slicing through the silence. David looked as though he had been slapped. He shot to his feet, his eyes burning red. "I worked day and night to provide for you, for our son. I trusted you completely. And this is how you repay me? You used your own twin sister to hide your betrayal? Camila, do you even see this family as anything anymore?" Camila lowered her head, then looked up again with a faint, bitter smile. "David, you're a good man, but you can't give me what I want. I don't need pity. I need power. I need wealth." Ethan burst into sobs, clutching me, crying out, "I don't want Mommy to leave me. I just want you to sing to me like yesterday." His innocent plea stole my breath, and tears filled my eyes. David looked at his son, then at Camila, his shoulders trembling. Finally, his voice came out steady, decisive. "Then this ends here. Tomorrow, I'll file for divorce. I won't let a wife who betrayed us live in this house another minute." Camila sneered, rising to her feet, brushing off her dress as if shedding a burden. "Fine, I don't need to stay. I have Richard, and I don't need custody of a child who will only hold me back." The room fell into silence, broken only by Ethan's sobs. I held him close, my heart twisting in pain. But deep down, I also felt the weight of truth had finally been lifted. Camila walked to the door, glancing back one last time, her eyes cold. "Goodbye." The slam of the door echoed like the final stroke of an ending. David collapsed into his chair, burying his face in his hands. Noah rested a hand on his shoulder, his voice low. "You still have me. You still have Mom, and Ethan. Don't let her destroy you any further." I stroked Ethan's hair and whispered, "Sweetheart, you haven't lost your mother. You still have me, your dad, and people who will truly love you." In that room, emotions surged like waves. Anger at betrayal, sorrow for little Ethan, and a bitter sense of justice, as Camila's mask finally fell away. I knew from that moment our family would never be the same. But at least, the truth had been revealed, and justice had found its place once more in this home. After that fateful evening, the house in Willow Creek sank into a long silence. In the first days, David barely spoke a word. He buried himself in work, came home late, his eyes heavy with weight. Ethan often sat quietly by the window, his innocent eyes staring at the road where his mother had walked away without looking back. I held him close as he whimpered, "Grandma, why isn't Mom coming back?" The question pierced my heart, but all I could whisper was, "You still have me, your dad, and you will always be loved." In those bleak days, Isabel appeared like a small light. At first, she only stopped by to comfort us, bringing home-cooked food and teaching Ethan how to draw. The boy quickly grew attached to Isabel, calling her by a hesitant name, Auntie. Each time, Isabel froze for a moment, her eyes wet, then smiled gently. "Yes, Auntie will stay with you." I watched them with tears in my eyes. The same face, the same voice, but Isabel carried a warmth that Camila had never truly given. When Ethan fell asleep in her lap, his little hand clutching hers tightly, I knew he had found a new place of safety. David at first kept his distance, like a wall protecting himself. He was afraid of being hurt again. But as time passed, what he saw wasn't pretense. It was Isabel carefully folding Ethan's blanket, her soft lullabies, her worried eyes when the boy caught a fever. One evening, David sat on the porch and sighed. "Mom, maybe I was too careless letting someone like Camila into my life." I laid my hand on his shoulder. "Don't blame yourself. You loved with honesty. But now, open your heart to see what's real." Those words planted a seed. David slowly began talking more with Isabel. They cooked together, took Ethan to the park, sat in the garden listening to crickets on summer nights. Each simple moment slowly stitched together the gaps in all three hearts. Ethan changed the most. The boy's smile returned. He ran freely in the yard, chattering about school. One day he threw his arms around Isabel and blurted out, "Mom, Isabel, I love you." Both David and I froze. Tears streamed down Isabel's cheeks as she held the boy tight, unable to speak. But in that moment, I knew our family had found new hope. From the wreckage, light crept into every corner of the house. Not immediately, but day by day, the air grew warmer, healed by genuine love, the kind Camila had abandoned in her chase for vanity. And I, Martha Greene, finally felt peace return to my heart. Every time I see David smiling beside his son and Isabel, I think about the painful road this family has just walked. The truth is like a sharp blade, slicing open the shell of what seemed perfect, exposing the raw wound beneath. Painful, merciless, but only then can the poison be drained, and the heart finally begin to heal. If I had stayed silent, the house might have kept its false sense of peace. But that peace would have been nothing more than a thin coat of paint covering the rot inside. It was the courage to face it, trembling though I was, that freed us all from the web of lies. The lesson I've learned is clearer than ever. Never ignore the little details. A change in handwriting, a sudden shift in mood, a child's innocent remark, all of it can be the key that unlocks a hidden truth. When we learn to listen and take note, the truth will emerge, no matter how carefully the liar tries to hide it. And now I want to ask you, the ones hearing this story, if you were in my place, what would you choose? Stay silent to preserve family harmony, or confront everything to seek justice, even at the cost of peace? I want to hear your honest thoughts because every answer could be a light to guide someone trapped in the darkness of deception. Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next revenge story. Who knows, your own story might be the wake-up call thousands of others desperately need.